Strategy number 3, evidence-based learning. There is so much we've learned about the way people learn, and so it's really important to focus on that. I'm going to talk about 4 ways that people learn. There are more ways and more theories on learning than this, so I encourage you to explore this. Let's talk about scaffolding first. So scaffolding is a way of learning where you get the big picture first. And what we've learned is that the brain is able to understand details when it has the big picture in mind or the end in mind. And so when you're learning something complex, if your brain has the big picture and now you're learning details about that, your brain can find places to insert those details. So for example, if you are learning about heart failure, if you saw a picture of a patient with heart failure that had all of the typical signs and symptoms of heart failure, and that was very clear to you based on the picture, then as you're learning about the signs and symptoms and some of the issues with heart failure, it gives your brain a place to go back to because it has that big picture in mind. Exposure is so important in learning. It has to do with how often you spend time with the content you're learning. So it needs to be multiple. It needs to be repeated. In fact, the more times you spend with that content, the more familiar it becomes, the more relevant it becomes to your brain, and the easier it is to retrieve it and recall it. And so imagine how important that is on an exam. So that's why spending time with the material is important. When you think about some of the pre-class prep that is assigned oftentimes, one of the ideas is to increase exposure. So if you don't do the pre-class prep and you come to class and it's the first time that you're hearing about something, it's very hard for your brain to be able to establish that information in the deeper areas of your learning, of your brain. And so by having multiple and repeated exposure to the material, you're able to better understand it. So imagine doing the pre-class work, coming to class, talking about it, maybe doing a case study or some activity in class with the content, going home, looking at your notes, and then studying or talking about it in a study group, and then studying before an exam, and then taking an exam. Those are a lot of different exposures to the same material. So that's a really important part of committing that information to deeper memory.
For real world answers to all of your questions on nursing, school, and life as